Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to have you with us. Thanks for coming to this press conference. I will introduce the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Mr. Philippe Lazzarini, to say a few words, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Commissioner.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here in Munich and in this conference room. I suggest that I will start to deliver for 3-4 minutes the remark I have prepared, but obviously after that we will go into the Q&A session. So no doubt today I'm relieved that the ceasefire continued to hold in Gaza and that more hostages held in Gaza have been released earlier today. And I call once again for the release of all the hostages held in Gaza and for all the parties to fulfill their obligation, hoping that after the first stage of the ceasefire, we will be able to go into the second and then to the third stage of the ceasefire. Now, I will share with you an update on where the agency is operationally. As you know, our team continued to stay and deliver amid exceptional challenges in Gaza, in the occupied West Bank, including in Jerusalem. Our work in Gaza has contributed so far to the success of the ceasefire. We have, since January 19, reached 1.5 million people with food aid, and we have expanded healthcare, including the reopening of a health center, and we have increased the number of health points across the Gaza Strip. In fact, on a daily basis, we provide about 18,000 consultations a day. In the occupied West Bank, our staff remain on the ground. We are providing education for 50,000 girls and boys in our school, and our health center also remain open and they are running. Now, regarding the attack on the agency, including disinformation and misinformation, an issue I have raised more than one, there are concerted, as you know, there are concerted efforts ongoing with the aim to dismantle the agency, and among this effort there is a lot of disinformation. In fact, I believe that the agency is a casualty of this war. Now, I think you are journalists, in fact, checking facts and reporting through first-hand official sources is the basic premises of independent reporting, and this is particularly critical given the prolonged ban on independent international media in Gaza. And I really wish that you can do more to get into Gaza, to cover the untold stories and to verify information you receive. As you know, the agency has also been target of billboards and ads, commercial ads, accusing UNRWA of terrorism, and this billboard appeared in major cities, both in New York but also in Europe and in Australia. And these billboards were paid by the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You might also have noticed that there are Google ad campaigns would redirect those seeking information about the agency to websites replete with misinformation. I have to say that this is putting the life of the UNRWA staff at risk, especially in the West Bank, but also in Gaza, where 273 UNRWA staff have already been killed. As we know, I said it many times, the objective of these attacks on the agency is to strip the Palestinians of the refugee statute. The right of Palestinian refugees to protection and assistance are, however, not derived from the UNRWA mandate. They exist independently of the agency. So what does it mean? If UNRWA ceases to provide services and assistance to Palestinian refugees, their right and their statute of refugee will remain. But if that happens, there will be much greater emphasis on durable solutions like return or resettlement, which UNRWA is not mandated to deliver. So bottom line, dismantling the agency would only deepen the suffering of Palestinian refugees, but it will not cancel the refugee statute. So let me briefly go back to the situation on the ground. Since the ceasefire began nearly 1 month ago, significant progress has been made in the delivery of humanitarian aid. On average, and this is part of the agreement, there have been 500 to 600 trucks a day. This is 10 times more than before, and it really shows that where there is a will, a political will, there is a way to deliver. It is still not enough, obviously, to meet the immensity of the need of the population on the ground. The good news is that the UN and the wider humanitarian community have reduced the risk of famine and alleviated hunger. In the West Bank, violence is surging. It is underreported, with significant forced displacement and civilian suffering. At least 40,000 people were forced to flee refugee camps in the northern area, like Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nablus. We are recording an increase in the use of airstrikes, armored bulldozer, controlled detonation, and advanced weaponry by the Israeli forces. Attack and misuse of UNRWA facilities continues. Just last week, Israeli forces used the UNRWA Arub Camp Health Center just near Bethlehem as a temporary detention site during a search and arrest operation. This incident follows a pattern of forcible entries into UNRWA installation in the West Bank since October 23, over 190 of this incident by both Palestinian armed forces but also Israeli security forces. Palestinian armed groups are also increasingly active in the North and West Bank, deploying improvised explosive devices inside refugee camps, including near UNRWA facilities and civilian infrastructure. Now, going to the Knesset bill. The Knesset bill, which came into effect at the end of last January, covered two areas. One that bans UNRWA from working in Israeli territory, and according to the Israeli authority, that also include East Jerusalem. And the second law enforce a no-contact policy between UNRWA representative and Israeli authorities. The latter primarily impact our operation in the West Bank and Gaza, but it does not prevent our activities. Now, let me conclude by telling you basically what I'm telling to the participant of the Munich conference, which is also very much related to the situation in which the agency is. As you know, the agency financial situation is more precarious than ever. We operate from hand to mouth, and there is obviously very little visibility or clarity for the future. So we are, as an agency, at a key turning point, and I keep telling now member states, our partners, that we have a choice which lies ahead of us. We can allow UNRWA to implode because of the Knesset legislation, and the suspension of funding by key donors. I believe if this would be the case, it would create a vacuum and potentially sow the seed for more despair and more extremism in the future. Or we can allow the agency to progressively conclude its mandate within a political framework and play a key role in the transitional process, including through handing over the agency public-like services to empowered Palestinian institutions. And as you know, there are currently efforts led by a group of Arab countries supported by European countries to find such a political pathway, and within this framework, UNRWA will be considered as an asset to make such a transition a success. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner General. We are opening the floor for any questions. Our friend here, Corinne, will take your questions. So if you can please introduce yourself and which media outlet you work for, please.
Thank you for your remarks. Markus Bickel from Table Media in Berlin. Could you comment on what the plans for Gaza by US President Trump have an effect on your work and on the work of UN organizations in Palestine and Israel as such?
Well, it's difficult to comment on what the impact would be, because for the time being it's an intent which is being shared. The plan is not implemented, but obviously if such a plan would be implemented, I don't see any role for any UN agency in the context of Gaza. Now you have heard our reaction about the plan, because the plan talks also about forcible displacement of Gazan from their homeland, which would be totally contrary to international laws, and this is clearly the position of the United Nations. There is other discussion taking place in the region, which is more related to a reconstruction of Gaza, which would be part of a broader political process promoting stability and peace in the region by addressing, in fact, the Palestinian question, by building up a Palestinian institution which would lay down the ground for a two-state solution.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Liz Palmer from CBS. A couple of things. Are you making plans to hand off a lot of your work to other agencies in the event that the Israeli government really lowers the boom and stops you from working? And if so, which ones? How are you preparing for it? And the second thing is, can you tell us a little more about the Palestinian organizations who may help in fulfilling those humanitarian duties, and how close are they to being able to operate? Because a real political solution that would, include naming a Palestinian Authority in Gaza seems a very long way off.
On your first question, I think we have to understand what the agency is all about. It's primarily a human development organization which is tasked to provide public-like services in the absence of a functioning state for the Palestinian refugees. So our core activities are government-like activities. So ultimately, the substitute of the agency is and would be functioning public institution. And that's the reason why before I was referring to, building up the capacity of a future prepared and empowered Palestinian institution. There is absolutely no other UN agency which is geared to provide, in the duration, at this scope, public-like services. The other UN agencies, when it comes to development, are either expert and advisor of a government or service provider with NGOs at a time of an acute humanitarian emergency. So when it comes to the acute humanitarian emergency, we are partnering with a broader UN family, with the other UN agencies. When it comes to food, we partner with the World Food Programme. They have also increased their supply chain. When it comes to medicine, we work very closely with the WHO or UNICEF, and so on. But none of these agencies are geared to provide these public-like services. Our staff, in reality, are like public civil servants. And I think here it's also important to understand that we have primarily teachers, nurses, engineers, and that the salary scale of our employees are aligned to the one of the Palestinian Authority and are absolutely not aligned to the national staff of any other UN agencies. So the short answer is increased partnership when it's for the acute humanitarian response, but when it comes to the core activities, the public-like services, the end goal is to have empowered public institutions. And that's how the agency can be replaced. Now, regarding Palestinian organization, Palestinian society, yes, this is part of a bigger plan when we talk about a genuine commitment to a political process, a genuine commitment to reform the Palestinian Authority, genuine commitment to build, empower all these capacities. An agency like ours can contribute when it comes to our core activities. We can help a Ministry of Education, we can help a Ministry of Health, we can help a Ministry of Social Affairs, for example.
Thanks. And just to clarify, Liz, that when it comes to salaries, we mean much less in comparison to other
agencies. That's what I think you understood, but thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm Gregor Meyer from the Landesspiegel Liechtenstein from Vaduz. What can the European states do, and what does the agency expect from the European states to support the agency's work?
Thank you. I think the EU member states can help to make sure that an agency like ours be part of a broader political framework, a political process which per nature would be transitional, and that would help the agency, in fact, to recover its temporary nature, but also to have an end goal. We should never ever forget that we are per nature normally a temporary organization which has lasted for 75 years. It has lasted for 75 years because of the absence of a political solution. Maybe, after what happened in the region, this should be a wake-up call to finally promote a political solution. And an agency like ours can be a valuable asset to make such a process a success. And I expect, and this was part of my discussion with the member states here, that both the European country but also the Arab countries make sure that the mandate of our agency, its mandate and its task be clearly delineated within such a process.
Yes, please.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Caitlin. I'm writing for the New York Review of Books. And you mentioned 273 staff have been killed. And I was wondering if you could speak about whether you think any of the efforts to hold the people responsible who signed off on those killings will be successful, and also if you're hearing discussions at the MSC around international humanitarian law and any countries that are showing particular leadership in trying to maintain some semblance of this, which has obviously been so decimated since the conflict began.
Thank you. I had a discussion with one of my colleagues recently, and we were trying to describe where we stand when it comes to, the international rule-based order. We have seen in this conflict, but we see it also elsewhere, the blatant disregard for any of the international norm. Red line are being pushed to the extent that international humanitarian law, the Geneva Convention, seem to become irrelevant, and there is a real danger. I think there is a danger that we enter a kind of a post-law without moral compass era. And what does it mean? That means that basically everything is possible. Now, I'm personally deeply concerned because what we have, the legacy of the Second World War, when it comes to the rule-based order, is at stake today. So, more broadly, and you feel it in the corridor of the Munich Conference, there is a deep concern about what that means going ahead.
Okay, two questions. We start with the gentleman with the scarf. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. Hugo Dixon at Reuters. I wanted to ask you whether you're concerned that the ceasefire process will break down at some point, either now or at the next stage or at some other stage, and that we will be back to war in Gaza, and that if we go back to war in Gaza, that Israel may actually move to a more perhaps back to the first strategy they had at the beginning of the war, which was a total siege of Gaza, and whether you would be able to operate at all in such circumstances.
I think we are all very concerned about the future of the ceasefire. 3 stages have been agreed. It's time to focus now on the second stage. I think even a few days ago we did not know if it would hold until today. The good news is that it has, and the good news is that hostages have been released, detainees have been released, and we can go to the next phase. But the concern is definitely here. It's a ceasefire which has been described as being highly fragile. And let's go to the scenario that you are describing, a return to an all-at-war situation with a total sealing of the Gaza Strip would be an absolute disaster for the population there, and obviously operating would become absolutely impossible. Now, sealing Gaza means also weaponizing the humanitarian assistance to population in danger. I really hope that this is not the path that the event will take in the coming days and weeks, and that instead all the attention be put to consolidate the ceasefire, its second phase, its third phase, and that we can also focus properly on the political process. But the risk is here.
Yes, please.
Hi, that's Marmar Turel, writing for Responsible Statecraft. I have a question in terms of somehow like building on my colleague's question about European countries' stance on the issue. We obviously don't have time to follow all the conversations here, but it seems obvious that on the main stage, at least, Gaza has been far less of a topic this year. Yeah, and then also, I mean, we know that without funds coming from the U.S. For UNRWA, but also for whole humanitarian aid effort, other countries should step up. Countries like Spain that may have supported UNRWA do not have the financial muscle to do that. In terms of like Germany, we don't know what to expect also from the next government. Friedrich Merz has said that they would not be arresting Netanyahu if he came here, and he has actually opened the doors for him to come. So I don't know if that's a statement about UNRWA, but one could say there's some clues there. So what do you expect, regarding European countries and funding for humanitarian aid in Gaza? Thank you.
I expect that the European Commission, the European countries remain committed to the mandate that they are conferred to the agency through the UN General Assembly mandate, which has been, support which has been reconfirmed in November last year. So it is true, and you're right, that there is a lot of concern about the United States posture, not just with UNRWA, but more globally about their contribution and support to humanitarian aid. It is true also that a number of European countries are going through austerity budget, which is also impacting their overseas budget. So there is, I would say, a deep anxiety within the broader humanitarian and development community about the impact of the situation on the project, because at the end we are really talking about the well-being or the life-saving of millions of people across the world.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes. Okay. So last question, please.
Thank you. Wenzel Wiedenker from the publisher house Herde, Freiburg, Germany. I have a theoretical question. You mentioned your mandate is not to provide a political solution to the conflict, but only to uphold infrastructure where there is none. Would this, on the other hand, mean that UNRWA would support any political solution to the conflict, including a one-state solution, given the fact that most of the homes of the former Palestinians before 1948 now lie on Israeli soil and not on the soil of the West Bank?
It's a theoretical question, so theoretical answer. Indeed, UNRWA is not an instrument put in place by the international community to promote a political solution. We have been set up to provide critical services to one of the most destitute communities across the region, being the Palestinian refugees, until the day there is a lasting and fair political solution. It does not say two-state, three-state, one state. It's a lasting and fair political solution. So basically, if the outcome of a political process is the one you are describing, obviously there would be no raison d'être for an agency like ours.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. Nice to see all of you, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.